Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul?
and Jolene. And today we're talking about mimicking real world concepts.
Something like that. Sounds good.
It's a very hard title to come up with.
Well, we're trying to think. This was a Reddit question, comment, post, whatever. And the person was asking, what are some things that games try to mimic, simulate in their RPGs that are based on real world things that happen or things in the real world?
Okay. And you started out with
Traveler.
Traveler.
So Traveler is an interesting game. It's a really old game now. It's a real old game now. And Traveler's been around since I think 1977 or even before. It was the first science fiction role playing game that was pretty popular and became vastly popular right after D&D came about. And it's still around today. I think it's in its fifth edition. There's also a Mongoose edition, and different people have come out with different iterations of Traveler. But at the base, it is a science fiction game, staying away from the fantastical things of Star Wars and even Star Trek. Right? They don't have
Well, you can choose the tech level for
your game,
your
right?
game.
The base or the standard is usually around tech level 8, 9, and 10, depending on how advanced you want the game to be. And all that matters is how fast you can travel or what kind of travel you can do in a spaceship. But that doesn't matter. What really matters is who the characters are and what the standard way of playing is. So the characters usually start off as coming out of some sort of service, whether it's a military service. They also have this thing called the survey service. It's kind of like I don't know what it would be like, but
Mechanical engineers.
is that what that is?
I have no idea.
And people exploring space and stuff like would be like NASA would be today. And of course they have the Marines and the Navy and the not so much they don't call them the Army, but something similar to the Army. Anyway, so you're all in this service for a number of tours, and Jolene, you attest to how this is. This is character creation. You get skills for every tour, a number of roles for skills depending on how long your tour is or how many tours you do.
So you can have a lot of skills if you're old and decrepit and can't do anything. Or you can have few skills if you were just in the military for a couple of years.
Right, and then you're out, and you get you have the skills for your character. You have
The amount of money that you made.
some savings, and then some equipment that they give you upon leaving the service. And they call it, I forget what they call it, but
So the characters are usually mediocre at best.
well, that's just inherent in Traveler. So with this kind of system and this kind of character creation, what is the adventures about? What is the game about? And inherently in the system, like I said, you have characters coming out of a service, and it's basically the idea is that these characters are in some sort of out of some sort of military. Usually, at least one of the characters is in the military, and when they
They
come
go
out,
out to make money.
they come out of the service, and what are they supposed to do? I think when I read the first little books, and the way we played it is, you become a small merchant,
Kind of
space merchant.
kind of like Firefly, right?
Like Firefly, you have this small ship, probably holding a little bit more stuff. I mean, that the Firefly vessel is pretty tiny.
So it's a bigger ship. You're like a space trucker.
Space trucker, right? So imagine Firefly, but with a little bit more cargo space. So in the game, you can put yourself in debt by borrowing a lot of money, because you don't get a lot of money when you muster out. That's what they call it, muster
Yeah.
out of the service. You have a few thousand shekels or credits in this world, and spaceships are millions of credits, right? So imagine you trying to buy, I don't know, a large ship with coming out of a service with a few $1,000s worth of savings. So you put yourself in debt usually, Or if you don't go that route, you get hired on a small merchant ship
Yeah.
that does the
That someone else put themselves in debt for.
right. And you're just either the crew, well, you are the crew, or and up to the captain. I don't know, maybe not the captain, but maybe the person right underneath it. At least the player characters. I've played in a number of games where that was exactly what happened. Is that either we pulled all our money together, we bought some piece of space junk that was able to fly, still cost us an arm and a leg, and we would have to make payments on that ship. And how do you make money? Well, in the rule book, there is a little, there's a lot of charts, or a few charts, I want to say a lot of charts, about how there's an economy in these worlds, in this setting. So there's all kinds of things that go into how much things cost, right? So you're not buying individual things, you're just buying stuff. And they have a list of stuff that you can buy, like mechanical parts, farm equipment, stuff like that, foodstuffs, wood, raw ores, and all this other stuff. And then they have different kinds of planets. They have agri-planets, they have developed planets, asteroids. And so they all these planets need stuff and they produce things. And
So you're basically just going from planet to planet, picking up stuff and dropping off stuff and getting paid for it. And
well,
right?
it depends. It depends on yes. Sometimes you buy it as the people.
Most of the time it's other people's stuff.
Well, you do get money. You can get paid for what is it for moving stuff, right?
But you got to be careful because it may not always be exactly what you think it is.
Well, there's that, but you'll make more money if you buy it and then you sell it, because then there's no middleman cut out. And so I think that's an economy that's built into the game, because there's all these charts and all these things you can, and there's all kinds of things that can modify. Like there's a skill of the person negotiating the deal. There's just random stuff that you always have to do a random die roll to see how good the economy is doing or how bad it is. And so this little economy, what did I call it? The cargo economy, or this economic system, is built into Traveler. And a lot of people just don't even look at it, right? Because that's not the adventure's about. The adventure's about saving somebody or solving a situation and stuff like that. But much like Serenity, because Serenity in the show, I'm sorry, Firefly the show, it's about these people trying to make money by moving cargo. The only problem is that the government, if you want to use that term, is so taxing, is that they can't make enough money to keep flying, which is to pay their bills and stuff. So they have to do stuff underhanded, or what do you call it?
They're smuggling stuff.
Smuggling stuff, right? So that's where they make a lot of money.
It's the same as what's his name? Han Solo.
Well, again, you look at Han Solo's ship, and it doesn't have a lot of room for cargo.
I know, but it has enough room.
It has enough room for special stuff. So smuggling does become part of the situation, because that's how you can make a lot of money and pay off your ship and all this other stuff. So that makes sense. But if you really didn't want to go that route and not risk getting arrested or getting your stuff confiscated, like your ship, you would be straight up on the up and up, and you would use this little system that they have with the charts to be able to try to make money.
I'm going to say that most likely that's why people don't always look at that part of it.
Oh, of course.
Because the game would be kind of boring if you pulled out the arithmetic stuff. And
Well, it's basically it was supply and demand, economics 101. Buy low, sell high. Right?
I got all these bolts and nobody wants them.
But maybe a farm community might need bolts for all their machinery.
You just got to get there.
You just got to get there, right? So it's a very interesting system. A few people that I know have used that, and that was basically what the game was about. They would go try to find stuff. They go to a planet where it was needed, or they might maximize their profits, and that's what they did. And in between this,
you had to save somebody.
You had
or,
these things
or stop a plot,
yes.
or different things like that.
Right. People have even made like little programs so they wouldn't have to crunch the numbers so much. They just put in, this is what I'm buying, this is the kind of planet I'm going to, what's my profit.
I see.
So I think it's very interesting that this is included in the Traveler game. I think it gives the characters a purpose to be flying around, and at the same time, of course, there's other things going on. You know, might be a galactic war, or there might be some factions going against each other, and there's some subterfuge. And who better to use as pawns in the subterfuge game of cat and mouse, or
Then the poor space truckers.
yeah, and then the poor space truckers that nobody's gonna think is doing naughty business or involved in that kind of stuff, and that's what I remember. Those are the games that I played in.
Okay, so give me a different game with a different mechanic.
So I really think that this system is really cool. Before I move on, because later on I saw it in Space Opera. Of course, it wasn't quite the same economic,
Because it was a different kind of game.
Because it's a different kind of game, and of course, they probably didn't want to like copyright stuff. They made their own little charts about cargo handling.
Space Opera has a chart for everything.
It's not Chartmaster, and I'm not sure there's too many other games that have this kind of little system built into their RPG.
Well, I'm gonna go with a lot of times when you're playing D&D, you play it that way, right? Like
You play it that way?
well, yeah, because someone pays you to do a job,
Oh.
and that's how you get around adventuring, right?
Oh, you're talking like being a cargo.
You
Guard or
you
something.
guard the convoy of
Yes.
of
Well, in this
merchants.
in this case, you're the merchant, and you're hiring guards to protect your stuff, and you're the one making the money. I think it's kind of interesting. Like I said, if you just played it that way, I think you're right. It'd be a very boring game. But some people really like this kind of like. Well, they probably really like board games and economic stuff, but I think I've heard of groups that's all they do, and on the side, they just do other stuff.
When you told me about this mechanic that you were going to talk about for Traveler, I thought immediately of, I don't remember the name of, there was a little computer game that you had where you went from one planet to the other buying stuff and selling stuff.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember what the name of the game was, but
Oh man.
I remember when you told me about that, I go, oh, Traveler. That I see. Maybe the same people that made that game were thinking about that.
Yeah.
Because you literally went from place to place buying stuff and selling stuff.
I totally forgot about that game. You're right.
And so the next one that you want to talk about is
Oh, right. So I think what we're talking about are things that try to mimic something, and either on purpose or not on purpose, but the game creators included a little system to mimic something that's very important to them, or that really make the game. Now, I don't know if you consider the cargo economy part of the game in Traveler central to the game, but it could be. Totally still staying with science fiction, and on a totally different track is Alien, the RPG. Now, Alien tries to mimic Alien, the movie, not Aliens, the movie, but even that movie is included in the world or of the RPG. So instead of cargo handlers or merchants, you really are space truckers in this game, and just like the movie Alien. Now, I'm not sure. I don't remember the movie that well. I mean, it's not one of my favorite movies, but I think they were just people working for a corporation,
Yes.
moving stuff. I think.
Well, I'm not sure about the moving stuff, but they were people working for a corporation. They were, but weren't they like
They
not
weren't
necessarily moving?
no.
They weren't military, but they were like researchers, right?
No, they were movers. They were, remember, because they blamed Ripley for blowing up a substantial amount of money. The stuff that they had was worth something, and the ship. So they were very upset about that.
Well-
But anyway,
Okay.
so Alien is about horror. It's about suspense, and it's about tension, right? These things are very much part of the movie. So when you're going to propose an Alien game, it has to be that. It has to include that kind of stuff, that suspense, that even horror, right? But horror is very hard to make people feel. Suspense is another one, and
I think because it's a genre game, a lot of people have seen at least Aliens.
yes,
I remember when Augustine was, what, 10, 11. He wanted, because we ran the Alien game at the convention, he wanted
Yes.
to see the movie, him and Alan and Ian.
Yeah, well,
And
it wasn't my choice. Go ahead.
anyway, they were, and I'm like, well, it's been a long time since I've seen that movie, and I don't think you're going to like it. And they didn't, but they demanded to see it. So we let them.
Yeah, this was at our friend's house, and I think I came in. I don't know where I was.
No, you were there.
Yeah, because I came in like after the movie had already started and stuff. And I said, "You guys shouldn't be watching this movie." And then somebody else's mother said, "They really want to watch." I go, "I don't think it's a good movie for them to watch." Because they were 10 or 11 around that age. And even though some 10-year-olds like horror movies,
I think they might have been like 13.
no, I don't think they're even that old. No. So they might have been 12. But anyway, we never let him watch horror movies is the
No.
one thing. And especially very graphic movies. And
Anyway,
so
the movie shows people the tension, right? Because if you watch Alien,
yes.
or Aliens, especially if Aliens, you know that there's these aliens out there, right?
Yes.
Because of the first movie, so the tension is higher because you know they're there, you just don't see them.
Well, in Alien, remember, they don't really show the monster too much, and I think that's part of the suspense, right? And the mystery. And then when they do show it, it's usually dark and stuff like that. And it's all about it being hidden
Right.
and stuff like that. And people being surprised and shocked about seeing things.
So simulating that in a role playing game is pretty tough.
Yeah, I agree.
But I do like the way that they do it in the game. I always call it the panic mechanic. I don't know what it is.
Free League, who is the publisher of Alien the game, they have a in-house system they call the Year Zero engine, which is a D6 die pool system. We add your stat, add the skill, and that's how many six-sided dice you roll, and you need a 6 to succeed. And on top of that, every iteration of that game, of that rule system in different games also has a push mechanic where
Yes.
you could re-roll all your dice to try to do it again. But if you fail, you get a condition or something bad happens or something like that. So in Alien, instead of a condition that you get a stress die, which actually adds to your dice pool every time you roll a die, which is pretty cool, right?
Making it easier for you to succeed.
There's a chip making it easier, not easier, but a higher chance of you succeeding because you added a dice. But if that die rolls a 1, then you roll on the stress table, and the stress table is a list of things that could happen if you roll high enough.
And just so you know, you have to have 2 different colored dice, one for the stress die and one for the regular die.
Right, it does help. When you roll a 1, you roll on the stress table, and depending on what level of stress you are at, you add that to the d6 that you roll on this table. So, for example, if you have 2 stress die, your stress level is 2. So you roll a 6-sided die, add 2, and the result is compared to this table.
The higher the number, the
worse
the worse
reaction.
stressed out you are.
Yes, and there's different things that could add to your stress level. It's not just pushing your roll. If you in the game,
If somebody else is stressed out and they scream, it gives everybody stress.
well, even before that, right? Even like before that, if you see the monster, you add stress to yourself. If you kill somebody, that adds a stress. If you see something really nasty, like body parts and stuff, you get a stress die. So you get stress from different things.
I'm going to say that if you're killing the company man, you shouldn't get any stress.
Well, if you get attacked by your own crew member, you add a stress die. So all these things add stress to your character, but they also make it easier for you to succeed on rolls. But they also increase the chance that you might roll a 1 on a stress die, and then you have a higher number chance. There's a higher chance that you might roll a higher number on the stress table, which causes different things, right?
So like things like you're in the room with the person that you suspect is the person causing the problems, right? And you can't move because you got so stressed out, and then they try to kill you, right? And nobody can get into the room.
Okay, so
I'm just saying that so it makes it very so the stress mechanic makes it so you can't move, right?
Well, there's
depending
different
on what you're
there's
rolling.
different things that could happen. So, for example, Jolene,
I'm giving you an example.
yeah, but I mean, you make it sound like, well, that is one of the things that could happen if you roll a certain number. Okay, so usually the first thing is probably pretty low on the totem pole. Is if you roll like a 7, is that's when things start getting bad for you. So on very low, if you roll a 1, your hand starts to shake. You get the shakes, right? And you gain a stress on top of the stress that you already have. So that's not so bad. Get a little shake. It doesn't do anything after a while. If somebody else sees that though, they have to roll on the stress table, or they might gain a stress. They don't have to roll on the stress table, so they gain stress by seeing you starting to shake.
Well, yeah, because when you see someone freaking out, then it kind of makes
Right.
you freak out, right?
Another thing is Jolene is correct. You can go catatonic. You can freeze in the situation until somebody either snaps you out or you kind of snap yourself out of it, if you get a chance to do that. A famous one that is really interesting is that you scream, right? You're like, ah, because you see the monster or whatever. The situation is bad, and anybody that hears you scream not only gains the stress, but you have to roll on the stress table, which actually was kind of funny because I actually liked this one because I thought it was very, very. What would you say? I call it very indicative or evocative of the situation or the genre of this horror game, where if you hear somebody scream, it's going to freak you out, right?
Right.
And then there's a chance that you might freak out at the same time. So it could dovetail into this chain reaction,
Which
of
is
people
the way
stressing out.
that emergency situations. That's the way that people react, right?
Well, in a horror situation,
Yeah,
right?
someone
Not
is
about
someone.
emergency.
Well, somebody gets upset or somebody starts screaming. Then either someone's trying to go, "Come on, you need to calm down," or they also start screaming, right? Or not and scream by screaming, whatever. I mean,
You
whatever the
start freaking
situation.
out.
Yeah,
I think that's a good term. I think this has been heralded as one of the best mechanics of its genre, right? Especially Alien, it just fits really well with the game, and we've talked about it before when we talked about the Alien game and how this really cements the system to a
it makes it because it's a horror game, right? So
right.
it adds that thriller part to it that you are not necessarily in control all the time because all of a sudden you're going to get scared. You're going to see the alien and you will not know what's going to happen, right? So it's going to cause stress. And it really does simulate it because then you have to roll on the stress table to see what happens. And it also is kind of comical and help in your game, right?
It could be, yes.
Because you never know what's going to happen, right? The pilot all of a sudden can't fly the ship, or the the person holding the flamethrower or
Can't
whatever
move,
can't
yes.
move, right? So
Yeah.
it makes it more stressful and in a little bit funny sometimes.
It can be, yes. And I think it just does a really good job of doing the whole panicking, stress, tension, and even horror, right? Because, like, you never know if your stress level is kind of high, you're like, man, you have a better chances of doing things. But if you stress out, or if you roll a 1 and you have to roll on that stress table, that in itself is stressful, right? As for
Oh
you as a
yeah.
player, and you're like, I don't want to roll that. I don't want to roll really high, and you never know what you might roll, and you could roll a 6, and you're pretty much
And a lot of times it doesn't have the alien isn't even around. It's like you find what do you call them, the cyborg or whatever, not cyborg but what
Cyborg.
the AI,
artificial person.
yeah, the artificial person, and there's something wrong with them or something, so it's very, you don't know what's going on.
Right.
There's usually a medical bay involved and things going off.
So
on the
obviously,
ship.
it's obviously the game does a really good job because Jolene was traumatized the last time she played this game, and I think, like I said, this is a really good game. It does really mimic the whole idea of Alien, the movie. Of course, they come up with supplements for it, and they have campaigns and stuff. But I really think that this we call it the panic mechanic, but I think Free League calls it the stress mechanic. And I think it really does mimic this idea that people can get stressed out, get freaked out, and what that can do to people around them. And I think it's pretty neat. I think it works really well.
Okay. And what's the next one?
I want to talk about the One Ring. I love the One Ring, of course, but two parts of the One Ring that I think it does better than any other game out there. One is the journey. I know people absolutely hate the journey mechanics. Journey is an important part of Tolkien's writing. There's no doubt. If you read The Lord of the Rings or seen the movie, they do a lot of traveling, right? They're doing a lot of walking and traveling. And in the book, unlike the movies, a lot of it matters, right? The fact that they're traveling for such a long time and the effect that has on the characters. You read about it, and even in the movie, it's palpable. You can understand that they're struggling to get through the marshes, they're struggling to get through the snow, mountain peaks, and everything else. So the journey part of the rules is just traveling from one town to the next can be dangerous and is an important part of the game, and is not taken for granted. Unlike maybe D&D, right? Because in D&D, oh yeah, you're gonna go to the next town, 3 days, you're there, and so you might simulate some camp out and get a set up watch, but for the most part, that's totally up to you as how you want to deal with it. But the One Ring
Has it written in?
has written in into the rules and how things play out and how things are solved, and having the appropriate character doing the appropriate job while you're traveling is important, and how it prevents you from getting into trouble or your party into trouble. And when those things fail, you come into encounters on the road that can really mess you up. I know people have not liked the journey rules. They're going, it's so boring, blah blah blah, and why does the journey always have to be so arduous and stuff? And I think they're just missing the point of that this game is trying to mimic the world of Tolkien, and in Tolkien's writing, traveling is dangerous. And
what was the second one?
the shadow and heart mechanic. The shadow is shadow points, right? You gain shadow for doing evil things. You gain shadow for becoming in contact with Sauron's minions. All kinds of things will give you shadow, being greedy and stuff like that. And then you have a heart score, and that's how that's your courage, how steadfast you are to your ideologies and stuff like that. And when your shadow and your heart become the same number, you basically fall into shadow and you stop playing that character because they become
Disheartened
and become an agent of the shadow. They become an agent of Sauron, and you stop playing. So what does that mean? Well, I think this mechanic is also trying to do is trying to reinforce the fact that players are good characters. So when you are traveling and doing things and acting, you're supposed to be a good character. You're supposed to be a good heroic character in this world that is not necessarily all that good sometimes. And acting out of that ideal is going to gain you shadow, and sooner or later, if you act too much that way, you're going to lose your character.
You're going to change.
You're going to lose your character.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to play your character anymore, which tells me and tells everybody that you're supposed to be playing good characters, and it's reinforced in the rules. There's no like, well, it's sort of evil, lawful evil, neutral evil. It's not going to really bother anybody. People can turn a blind eye. No, this is inherent in the game, and there's no way around it. There's no way of I don't know what you would call it, dancing around the fact that if you do evil things or things that are not nice, you're going to gain shadow, and if you do it too often, you're not going to be able to play the game anymore with that character. I think that has kind of fallen out of favor in a lot of games of there is no good and evil, there's no black and white, it's all perspective or a matter of opinion.
I think it depends on the game you're playing.
You're right.
The World of Darkness is a different kind of game than
well, I mean yeah, but those kind of games and that kind of ideology has been kind of popular lately, where everything is gray, right? The hero, are they really heroes? Are they anti-heroes? Are they
I guess it is going to depend on the group you're playing with.
A lot of it depends on that, right? But the rules reinforce this idea that
right.
token and the world that you're playing in, Middle Earth, is a black and white society for the most part. And I think it's really neat. I really like it. Well, I like it because I like playing good characters, and I don't run evil campaigns.
Well, I think the journeying mechanic,
Yeah.
other games do have that. Like we were playing Dragon Bane,
Yes, yes.
and you always have to roll your bushcraft.
Yes.
So you're gonna hope someone in your party has a good bushcraft.
Right. And if you don't roll well, you something's gonna happen. You roll on a 6-die die.
It takes you longer.
Yes.
You get fatigued
and
hungry,
and something could happen.
And depending on the number you roll,
Yes,
something is gonna come along.
Right.
So that's another game that has a journeying, not a journeying. They just call it a traveling mechanic.
And I think it makes traveling meaningful. Like in other games, you kind of just hand wave it. In this case, you don't hand wave it. It just reinforces the idea that traveling in Middle Earth is not something taken lightly, because a lot of people don't, right? And then this is true in the real world. We talked about that a lot of people stay put. If we couldn't get in our cars and drive 60 miles or 30 miles to the beach, would we really walk to the beach just to frolic in the sun? 30 miles? I'm not sure. I don't know. We would. It would be something that would take a long time to do and to get back, and would it be an easy thing to do?
That's why you get horses and carriages so you didn't have to walk.
That's true. It's
still, just saying.
But still, it take a little bit of time.
Yes.
And so when you will go to the next town in a medieval world or a Middle Earth, it's going to take time.
Of course.
And it's not something you're just going to, oh yeah, let's just go. Like sometimes we do that. We used to do that. Hey, let's just go to Monterey. Okay, get up early. Let's go. No planning. Okay, hold on. We got to go for 3 days on cart or horse and buggy. We got to have food, water. Okay, and we got to come back. It just doesn't happen. Okay, so there we go. A lot of people don't like it, but I do.
And the next one that you want to talk about?
Tales from the Loop.
Okay.
So Tales from the Loop is a 1980s that never was. You play you play children, or you play people from the
Queens,
ages,
right?
I don't like that term. You play people from the ages of between 11 and 15.
Yes.
So whatever term you want to call those people, and you're playing in a world where fantastical things have happened as far as advances in science, and like big old huge anti-grav things. Robots have been really advanced. Also, there's the loop, which is the whole thing is centered around. There's this large Hadron Collider kind of thing, and your city, your town is home to one of these, and they do all kinds of crazy experiments, which could
cause crazy things to happen
outside the loop, right? To the neighboring neighborhoods, and other things can happen. So what's interesting about this game is that the children cannot die because they're children,
right?
And nobody wants to. I don't think nobody wants to see children die. So in this game, children cannot die, but they can become broken, right? So what does that mean? There are certain characteristics that everybody has, and if
you take a condition if you fail your rolls,
right? So there's these,
and the conditions are what? Tired.
Yeah, it's kind of like exhausted, scared. There's a number of them.
And the way you get rid of the conditions by the rules is you go home to the safe place, right?
Or a safe place,
right? And you eat, and you talk to your grandparents, or
right,
something.
Or whatever. Yeah, whatever is appropriate for your character to feel safe,
right?
So in this game, these conditions are very much things that a kid would feel: tired, scared, hungry. So I think when they made Tales from the Loop, they were trying to mimic how children reacted to stress. And they react to stress differently than adults. And when...
is it the same? It's Free League, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same one as Aliens.
Yes.
It's just a different mechanic.
Well, yeah, they have different terms.
Right.
Yes. And there's no hit points
in
Tales from the Loop. Okay, so the conditions are upset, injured, tired, broken, and something else.
Isn't it hungry?
Hungry. Well, maybe hungry. built into the game is somebody that is
Your safe person.
your anchor, right? Somebody
Yeah.
that you go to when things go bad, or a safe place. It could be your
Home
house, yeah, home,
or your clubhouse.
yeah, and you form a clubhouse or you form a group with your with the other players, the other kids. Usually, you have a clubhouse or somewhere you hang out. That could be a safe place, a tree house, places where kids feel
So
safe.
basically, it's mimicking what young teenagers or even 10-year-olds or
Right.
to 16 or to 18-year-olds, right? Kids that what do kids do that they in the 80s. I'm talking about in the 80s, not now, because my son, his safe place is in front of his computer screen killing things, I believe. Um, that's where he meets with his friends, also, right?
That's true.
Versus when you were a kid, you had your cousins maybe or your friends in your neighborhood, different kinds of people that things that you did that made you feel safe, right? And there was always you could sit down in front of the TV and watch your favorite TV show, whatever. So everybody has different things, but that's kind of what it's trying to mimic, right? That there are these places and people in everybody's life that make them feel safe.
Correct. And I think that's very 80s like. I don't
Yes.
know if, like you said, I don't know if kids these days have that same kind of experience.
But it's a different kind. It's scrolling on TikTok that makes them feel safe. I don't know.
Brain didn't work like it. But Gen Xers, like we are, and people who grew up in the 80s are very, what is it? They're very nostalgic about things that happened in the 80s and how they used to play compared to kids these days, which I'm not sure is true. I think it might be true.
Some of it's true, some of it's
Some of
not.
it might be true, but I think it also depends on where you're from,
Right.
where you're at. Because I was in a sort of rural area, and I think if I raised my son in that same rural town or that same, let's say that my parents' house, he would probably have the same kind of experience that I did, playing, riding his bike in the neighborhood instead of being in front of the computer like we are in a urban setting.
Right.
But Tales from the Loop really nails it on the head with this mechanic of not being able to kill kids, which is good, and also mimicking these conditions that kids feel. And it doesn't matter; it doesn't have to make sense, right? When a kid is hungry, they're just hungry. Nothing else matters. Or if they're upset, they're just upset. There's no
No reasoning.
there's almost no reasoning, right? And things that make you feel safe could be just it may not even be a safe place, right? A tree house. I mean, I remember my brothers and sisters, well, mainly my brothers, not my sisters, but they had a tree house that was completely unsafe, right? And I remember one of them fell out of the tree house because they had boards on only 3 walls, and one of them was cardboard and only cardboard. So when one of my, I don't think it was one of my brothers, but a friend leaned up back against that cardboard, he went flipping backwards out of the treehouse. And it was this large walnut, not a walnut tree, but it was a big tree. It was a walnut tree. Anyway, so I think the Tales from the Loop, that mechanic, the condition mechanic, the idea that that children can't be harmed for physically for a long time is pretty neat and very much fits the genre that it's trying to mimic. It kind of like the Goonies, the movie The Goonies, where
Yeah.
these kids are having an adventure and nobody really gets hurt. They just get upset, but their friends or their mom or their uncle or whoever can make them feel better by simply just being there and talking to them and giving them a hug.
Yeah.
Very kid orientated. Real quick, I know we're running long, but I'd like to talk a little bit about Shadowrun. And Cyberpunk both have this idea of losing your humanity.
It's a big theme, right?
Oh yeah,
Because you can any modifications you make
right
to your body
lowers your
your
humanity.
essence.
Yeah.
Yes.
I forget what it's called in Cyberpunk, but they call it something.
But in Shadowrun, it's called essence.
Right.
When you get to a certain point where your essence is so low, then you're not really human anymore.
Right. So you become in Cyberpunk, it's called cyberpsychosis. You become this mad killing machine, and the only way to stop you is to take you out, put you down. And I think it reinforces this idea that you can't modify your body too much, or you lose yourself.
Right.
Right. And I think that's a very interesting idea in in both those games.
which is a really interesting idea because like when the boys, they were older teenagers when we started playing this
Yes.
game, and they really liked the idea of modifications. Of
Oh,
course,
yeah.
we played with Jason, who loved Shadowrun and loved modifications.
Yes.
Right? They want the cyber limbs. They want all these different things.
Armor and wired reflexes.
Yeah.
And all that takes your humanity away from you.
Little pieces at a time.
Yes.
Literally, it's 0.02 or 0.2.
Depending on how much you.
But
can
you only
afford.
have like 6 essence, right?
Yes.
And as you go to, the more that you modify so I think 2.5 is like dangerously low on your humanity.
I
your
think once
essence.
you get down to 1 is when you
Yeah.
start wondering whether you should do anything else. So that's pretty cool. I really like that idea, and I think it just reinforces the idea that you can go too far in modifying adding cybernetics to your body.
Yeah.
Another one is, and I really like Conan Doom. Though Conan uses a 2D20 system and a 2D20 system, all of them have this idea of the momentum pool and being able to add dice to your rolls by giving the GM bennies or chips or whatever they call it. Every game has a different term for this, but in Conan it's called Doom, right? And I really like that term, not only because it sounds cool, but also because it's exactly that, right? So let's say you don't make a roll. You could before you roll go, you know what? I want an extra D20 to try to make this give me better odds of succeeding. So when you do that, you give a chip to the GM, and it's called a Doom chip, right? And then you roll your dice, and hopefully you make your roll. But the problem is,
Well, in
that,
Conan, don't you produce momentum pool?
yeah.
So you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't give the GM the Doom unless
You have no
you don't have any more
Sometimes there's
momentum.
no momentum.
Right.
The momentum pool is there if there's anything in it. But if there's none in it and you really want to make a roll, you could give a Doom chip to the GM. And the reason I like the term, I mean, it's inherent in every 2D20 system, being able to give a chip to the GM for later, they can use against you later. But just the idea that you're giving the GM a Doom chip, to me, is like the future is being sowed, right? Not much later, but
I want to get this done now, so I'm gonna take a hit later.
yes, and Doom was coming, right?
Yes.
And so I remember it wasn't me who was playing the game. I think it was Shannon, and it was probably at a con game. Everybody in the game was giving him Doom chips, right? Because he's like, they're all missing their or think they're going to miss their rolls, and they really want to make their rolls to succeed. So they're giving, and so at one point Shannon looks up, and my brother was stacking chips in front of him, right? And he realized he had this pile of chips in front of him that he could use later, right? My brother. Or
Right.
to do things, and then toward the end of the game, my brother just starts throwing the Doom chips back. Here, I'm using this up, I'm using them, and so they were really suffering. And
Well, yeah, because
because
the Doom chips let the GM go before you, do all kinds of different things.
Let the characters act twice.
Yeah.
They can cut before you in initiative order. All kinds of things can be done by using the Doom, and use it against players. And it's very, I don't know what it is, but when you see the GM grabbing that chip, you're like, fudge, right? You're like, God damn it. And then why did we give him so many chips, right? Because he starts off with a few to the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
But Shannon said that he just had a pile of them, and then toward the end of the game, when the game was obviously coming to a climax,
he started using them.
He just started tossing them back at the players, and they're like, oh, they're all very disheartened about the situation. So I think it's pretty neat. I think it just fits well with the whole genre of Conan and how he presses his luck, right? And
he always does.
He always does, right? But later on, it's going to catch up to him, and sometimes it does.
And it always does.
And most time it does, right? Sometimes it just, God, because he always gets taken a step back.
Yes.
Knocked down a few notches. So I think it's pretty fitting for the genre. I think it's pretty neat. Modifius lost the license for that game, so it's being made by some other company. I I forget the name of it. They just put out a quick start for it. I don't know any information about it, but it should be interesting how they handle Conan as a game. Real world things that game mechanics try to mimic, try to simulate. Different games try to do it differently, and these were for me, were some examples of how they did it pretty well.
So there you go. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
and you have a good day.